Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel, Ronald the Peculiar One. Everybody's talking about the homelessness and how they're arresting the homeless. It's a crime to be homeless. Well, let's go over, the document here. It's going to take a little reading, and I'm not a lawyer, so if I happen to go across some words that are kind of lawyer-like or anything, I'm just skip it, and you can look it up yourself. Let's get started on this. It's the White House. Presidential actions ending crime and disorder on American streets. As you see there, July 24th, 2025. It says, by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1, I'll read it. It's going to be kind of long, and I'm going to tell you my opinion. This is my opinion, my take, my view of this, and you can also look it up yourself. And let's get started. And you can always pause, rewind, fast forward as you see fit. Section 1, purpose of policy and policy. Some of these words are kind of dictionary. Adamant vagrancy, disorderly behavior, sudden confrontations, and violent attacks have made our cities unsafe. The number of individuals living on the streets in the United States on a single night during the last year of the previous administration, 274,224, was the highest ever recorded. It's millions, people. It's not 274,000. It's millions. Was the highest ever recorded. The overwhelming majority of these individuals are addicted to drugs, have a mental health condition, or both. Now, their definition of mental health problems, I got news for you. We all have that. It's in perceptions as a person. Let me give you an example. Let's say that I told you a math problem. Let's say 2 plus 2. Now answer it. The other person says 7, or is just joking around, or just they're not very good at math. Well, you have a mental illness. It's a decent example, straightforward, simple. Anybody who can't comprehend what someone else is saying specifically, you could talk about science, you could talk about algebra, you could talk about something complex if you want. You have a mental illness if you don't understand how to solve what I'm asking. So in other words, if you can't answer whatever the question is, you have a mental illness. All right, let's keep going. I just want to throw that in there as an example. Nearly 2/3, 2 out of 3. Why don't you just say it? 2 out of 3. Nearly 2/3 or 2 out of 3 people of the homeless individuals report having regularly used hard drugs like methamphetamines, cocaine, opioids in their lifetimes. And equally, excuse me, I had a burp there. Equally large share of homeless individuals reported suffering from mental health conditions. The federal government and the states have spent tens of billions of dollars on failed programs that address homelessness, but not its root causes, leaving our other citizens vulnerable to public safety threats. Yeah, I will say that there are drug addictors out, drug people that are taking drugs that obviously are mentally unstable while on the drugs. I get that part of it, but I guarantee you it's not just drug addiction or sex offenders or mental illness issues. There's real people that are staying in their cars, are homeless, lost everything, living in RVs or little campsites or tents or whatever it is. They're not mentally ill. Unless you call mental illness. If you can't answer my question, you have mental illness. And you can read that. And okay, let's go. Shifting homeless individuals. If I missed something. Yeah, shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings for humane treatments through appropriate use of civil commitment with restore public order. Will restore public order. Surrendering our cities and citizens to disorder and fear is neither compassionate to the homeless nor other citizens. My administration will take a new approach focused on protecting public safety. Real quick on that is let's see. Well, it's self-explanatory. I was going to say something quick, but let's just keep going. This is a long little page here, so let's just kind of get through some of it. Restoring civil commitment. An Attorney General in consultation with the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall take appropriate action to seek in appropriate cases the reversal of federal or state judicial proceedings and the termination of consent decrees that impede the United States policy and encouraging civil commitment to individuals with mental illness who pose risks to themselves or public or are living on the streets and cannot care for themselves in appropriate facilities for appropriate periods of time. Well, what I was going to say is that up here, when it talks about health conditions or putting them in places, there's no places for them to go. They were all thrown out in the street. I watched some body cam footage of recent cop situations, and some people were talking about how they closed these mental institutions. They're no longer funding them. They just kicked them right out into the street. In other words, it was a rich, quick buck scheme, and they just shut down the programs because they took the money and ran. Basically, remember some of the money that's supposed to go on our taxes, with all the money that's supposed to go to taxes to support programs and stuff. Well, they kept it. They kept a lot of it. This is my opinion take. Okay, here we go. It says seek in appropriate cases the reversal of federal or state judicial. Did I read that already? Yeah, okay. I'll let you read this part. I think I read some of this. It's talking about that the program didn't work, but they're going to give more authority. So in other words, each state, executive orders only work if that state decides to go along with it, and then that state will get fundings for to enforce the executive order. So if all 50 states did it, all 50 states will get funding for it. If a state refuses it, then they're going against that executive order, so they won't get funded for that state. Just wanted to kind of verify that a little bit, or kind of go into that topic. You can pause this and read this. It's basically they want to do treatments, get the mental ill off the street, people that are basically the main headline basically is drug addiction or mentally ill from drug addiction. And this is talking about how if they don't go along with it, They don't get the funding. All right, let's just keep going. Number 3, fighting vagrancy of America's streets. The Attorney General, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary of House and Urban Development, and the Secretary of Transportation shall take immediate steps to assess their discretionary grant programs at your discretion and determine whether priority for those grants may be given to grants in states and municipalities that actively meet the below criteria to the maximum extent permitted by law. Okay, here's the problem. These are the 3 main things that's the problem right here. Enforce prohibitions on open illicit drug use. I get that part, but this is making it so that police can arrest anyone. If you're in an RV, camper, it says right here, enforce prohibitions on urban camping and loitering. There's your key words right there. Enforce prohibitions on urban squatting. So if you're on the sidewalk, sleeping on a bench, have a tent, sleeping in your car, parked on the side of the road, having an RV parked on the side of the road. So right there, it just don't say it. It don't say RV. These 3 right here that I just read is what the problem is. I get the point with the drug use. I think the only way that they should arrest a homeless person, if they're not breaking any crimes, doing any crimes, is if they see them take the drugs. If they see them take the drugs, or they erratic, kind of going crazy, breaking stuff, picking stuff up, walking in the middle of the road, stuff like that. I get that. But just for sleeping in your car, whatever. Okay, let's continue this. 4, enforce and where necessary. See, enforce right there. And where necessary, adopt standards that address individuals who are a danger to themselves or others and suffer from serious mental illness. They're using mental illness as the key there. Or substance use disorder. There you go. Or who are living on the streets and cannot care for themselves. There you go. Through assistant outpatient treatment or by moving them into treatment centers or other appropriate facilities, civil commitment, or other available means to the maximum extent permitted by law. Okay, let's go over that real quick. Living on the streets, you can't care for yourself, meaning you don't pay bill. What do they call that? No financial responsibility. That's what they should have put in this. You don't have a job. Oh, you can't pay car insurance, or you can't afford to live in an apartment. It's what they should have put in this, because it's the same thing. You can't afford it. Most people can't. Have you seen the food prices lately, people? We're all one step from being homeless. Remember that. We're all one step from being homeless. If you're fortunate, still have a job. If you're fortunate, still have good health. A lot of people don't have good health, so they lose their job, and they're easily replaced. You can't keep up with those robots. You can't keep up with those machines. You can't keep up with the other coworkers. You can't keep up. Hurry up. You got to unload and load this truck. Move it, move it, move it. You can't keep up. What happens? They replace you, and then you're homeless. You're homeless, people. It's that easy to be homeless. And there's no place to put these people. Like I said, there's no place to put these people. What this thing's saying is they're assuming, it's an assumption there's a place to put them. There's no place to put them because the town, the city, the state took the money for themselves. In this state, in many states, they use the lottery to make money, and it's supposed to go to fixing the roads and stuff. Does it? Does it go to fixing the roads and stuff? No, it does not. Some of it does not go to where they say it goes, people. Just like when I did that thing for Doze or whatever it is that Musk guy was involved with for the government, where they were paying all these fees, all this money was going somewhere, and they didn't know where it goes. The same thing is happening with this right here. All right, let's keep going. Substantially implement and comply with the extent required to registration and notification of obligations of the Sex Offender Registry and Notification Act, particularly in the case of the registered sex offenders with no fixed address, including by adequately mapping and checking the location of homeless sex offenders. Okay, I can see if they're taking drugs right in front of you and they're out of control after they take the drugs. I get that. I can also see the sex offender thing, that they always have to know where they are. I get that. That's for that part makes sense. But let's keep going. The Attorney General shall ensure that the homeless individuals arrested for federal crimes are evaluated. Well, it's for federal crimes. It consists with a 18 U.S.C. 4248 to determine whether they are sexually dangerous persons and certified according by civil commitment. Take all necessary steps to ensure the availability of funds under the Emergency Federal Law Enforcement Assistance Program to support as consistent with 34 U.S.C. 5101 ET-SEQ encampment removal efforts in areas in which public safety is at risk and state and local resources are adequate. Right there. Encampment removal efforts. Public safety. So in other words, you can't be in a tent in the woods. You can't be on the side of the road out of everybody's way. You're not hurting anyone for the night. To set up a tent, assess federal resources to determine whether they may be directed toward ensuring to the extent permitted by law. Permitted by law. That's another key saying. They say permitted by law. That detainees, see, they're going to detain you. They'll arrest you, basically, with a serious mental illness or not released into the public. Okay, here's the scary part, people. This is my opinion, my take. This is where homeless people are disappearing, right here. This part gives them the authority to put them wherever they want. They don't have to put them anywhere. They don't have to tell anybody where they're taking these homeless people. Say, remember Batman? How he went and locked up Joker at that mental institution? They just lock him up in some place and throw away the key, basically. And okay, let's keep going. Assess federal resources to determine whether they may be directed toward ensuring to the extent permitted by law that detainees with serious mental illness are not released into the public because of lack of forensic bed capacity at an appropriate local, state, or federal jails or hospitals. Say, and enhance requirements that prisons and residential reentry centers that are under the authority of the Attorney General or receive funding from the Attorney General require in custody housing release plans and to the maximum extent practicable require individuals to comply. Okay, so by the wording stuff, they can leave out a few words. So in other words, they're basically saying whatever they have available, wherever you want to put them, you can either put them with what we listed here, or you can put them somewhere at your own discretion. So in other words, I want to say this is my personal opinion. If they want to do something illegal to these people, something awful towards these people, this will give them an excuse to grab them, arrest them, and then they'll disappear, or they'll forget where they went. Oh, they didn't have no ID. Oh, we couldn't identify them, so we sent them to a location not in the list, at our discretion, and that's where they are. So they might not even be able to or might not even have to tell anyone where they put them. So in other words, this is where human trafficking come in. This was where they could kill the people and harvest their organs and make a fortune off these people. They could do all kinds of sick, awful things within this stuff, which they do anyway, whether this was written out or not. Read between the lines, people. This is just my opinion and my take, my review of this. Redirecting federal resources toward effective methods of addressing homelessness. Secretary of Health and Human Services shall take appropriate action. Appropriate action is another key words there. Ensure that discretionary, here we go, discretionary grants issued by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration for substance use disorder prevention, treatment, and recovery fund evidence-based programs and do not fund programs that fail to achieve adequate outcomes, including so-called harm reduction or safe consumption efforts that only facilitate illegal drug use and its attendant harm. Yeah, psychopedia words. Provide technical assistance to assist outpatient treatment programs for individuals. See, here's the problem with this program stuff. There's not enough beds. There's not enough housing. There's not enough buildings to diagnose these people. Serious mental illness, addiction during and after the civil commitment process focused on shifting such individuals off the streets and public programs and into private housing and support networks. Private housing is a no-go. You're 6 months, years away from being able to even get it. And plus, they don't tell you what you'll be getting. They say you got 48 hours to accept it, and then you have to go wherever they tell them. So if it's a awful place, apartment, or whatever it is, you have no choice but to take it, which could be worse where they're living on the side of the road in a tent. So plus they're closing down public bathrooms, turning the water off, and we all funded this for water and public bathrooms, and they close them down so the homeless can't use them. Yet we funded all of that to keep them open, and they're public. Homeless people are still public. They can use the public's bathrooms and stuff. They're not criminals, but they're closing them down so they can't use the water. They can't use the bathrooms. Shame on them. Shame on them. This is what I've been hearing all over the place. Homeless people are saying this stuff. Ensure that federal funds for federally qualified health centers and certified community behavior health clinics reduce rather than promote homelessness by supporting to the maximum extent permitted by law comprehensive services for individuals with serious mental illness, substance use disorder, including crisis interventions and services. The Attorney General shall prioritize available funding to support the expansion of drug courts and mental health courts for individuals for which such diversion serves public safety. Increasing accountability and safety in America's homelessness programs. The Secretary of the Health and Human Services, Secretary of the Housing and Urban Development shall take appropriate action to increase accountability in their provision of and grants awards for homelessness assistance. See, they're going to basically, for the people who go along with the executive orders, you're going to get funding. Increased accountability. Okay. Homelessness assistance transitions, living programs. These actions shall include the extent permitted by law, intending support for housing first policies that deprioritize accountability and fail to promote treatment, recovery, and self-sufficiency, increasing competition among grantees through broadening the applicant pool and holding grants to higher standards of effectiveness, and in reducing homelessness and increasing public safety. I could go on about that part. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development shall, as appropriate, take steps to require recipients of federal housing and homelessness assistance to increase requirements that persons participating in the recipients' programs who suffer from substance use disorder or serious mental illness use a substance abuse treatment or mental health services as conditions of participation. So they have to go along with it, and or they won't get help. But if you watch all these real homeless videos and all this other stuff, there's no place for these people to go. It doesn't matter. There's too many of us. I'm going to say us. I'm not homeless yet, but I'm only one step, and so are you or anybody else, most of us anyway. But we're only one step away from being homeless. The respect of recipients of housing and homelessness assistance to operate drug injection sites or safe consumption sites. Knowingly distribute drug paraphernalia or permit the use or dispersion of illicit drugs on property under their control. The Attorney General shall review whether such recipients are in violation of federal law, including 21 U.S.C. 856, and bring civil or criminal actions in appropriate cases. And the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, in the coordination of the Attorney General, shall review whether such recipients are in violation of the terms of the programs pursuant to which they receive federal housing and homelessness assistance, and freeze their assistance as appropriate. So in other words, if they do something wrong, in other words, if they don't cross their T's and dot their I's exactly the way they do, just like the food stamps, you better do exactly what it say. Oh, you can't have that much in your bank account. So now we're going to cancel your food stamps because you're saving a couple bucks. So all it's going to take is one little thing, and then their assistance is frozen, and they're kicked right back out in the street. A Secretary of Housing and Urban Development shall take appropriate measures to revise regulations as necessary to allow, where permissible under applicable law, federally funded programs to exclusively house women and children, and to stop sex offenders who receive homelessness assistance through such programs from being housed with unrelated children. Okay, that makes sense. That part. You don't want to put sex offenders where there's kids. I get it. That makes sense. The Secretary of Housing and Urban Development in consultation with the Attorney General and the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall, as appropriate and to extent permitted by law, allow or require the recipients of federal funding for homelessness assistance to collect health-related information that Secretary of Housing and Urban Development identifies as necessary to the effective and efficient operation of the funding program from all persons to whom such assistance is provided, and require those funding recipients to share such data with law enforcement authorities in circumstance permitted by law, and to use the collected health data to provide appropriate medical care to individuals with mental health diagnosis, or to connect individuals to public health resources. So in other words, they're going to spy on these people. And this isn't just about the sex offenders. This is everybody. If you get an apartment, they give you a little spot, this little square box to live in. They're going to check on you. They're gonna keep their. You do one little thing wrong. You don't go to your appointment. Well, you just violated some of this stuff, so we're gonna kick your butt back out. Now you're homeless again. And if they do that type of thing after getting them off the street, now they're gonna kick them out because of some stupid little thing. Then they're part of the problem. They're not helping them. They'll just put somebody else in there. Nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect the authority granted by law to an executive department or agency or the head thereof, or the functions of the director of the office management and budget relating to, well, budgetary, administrative, or legislative proposed. Wow, try saying F 5 times fast. In order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations. This order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law, or an iniquity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, or entities. Entities, that's evil. Put evil in front of that. Evil entities. Its officers, employees, or agents, or any other person. The cost of for publication of this order shall be borne by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Donald J. Trump, White House, July 24th, 2025. There you go, everybody. There you go. I know it's kind of long, but that's the executive order for ending crime and disorders on America's streets. Basically, let's attack the homeless. Let's go after their RVs, after their campsites. All brought to you by the presidency. So, did the president just betray all of us? Because homeless people are our people. They are our people. They're Americans. And they're arresting them. They're throwing them into jail. They're do examinations on them to see how mentally ill they are. Whether they can see. Here's the problem. There's too many people. There's not enough programs. There's not enough buildings. Not enough staff to do this stuff. If they made let's say, if they cleared out, let's say you had a major mall in every town and every city. If you cleared out that major mall and you put all these people in there to help homeless and stuff, the building still wouldn't be big enough to help the public. It wouldn't be big. It wouldn't be big enough to help everybody. That's how many people are homeless people. Just so you know. All right, that's the executive order. That's what it is, right there. So now you know. Now some of the stuff is just my comments, my opinion. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a regular person, and I just read it to you. Believe it or not, that those words that are in between, at their discretion, if they can't put them in a house, or they can't put them in jail, they can't put them in a hospital, they can't put them in those facilities to get checked out, those mental health places to be checked out and housed there temporarily, and there's no housing for them, then they can put them somewhere else that's not on that list that I read there. So in other words, if you read between the lines, at their discretion, they can put them in their barn and do whatever awful things to these people if they wanted to. They could sell them off and just say, oh, we don't know where they went. And we have a lot of crooked people that are in the government. We have a lot of crooked people that run these cities and run these towns. There's always a group. I'm going to tell you that right now. There's always a group that run these towns, that run these cities, and run these states, and runs this nation. There's a lot of awful people out there that are in these positions to take advantage of this executive order. By in between these lines, you can read it. If you have any sense, if you can watch some of those real videos of homeless people when they interview them, when they talk about their situation, when people put their videos up when they're inside their cars because they live in their cars, and they do their own YouTube channels. I advise you to check out a lot of them. Now, I want to say something straightforward with you on this. Some of those people that do YouTube have YouTube channels that they pretend to live in their cars. I'm not saying that's with every one of them, but I just want you to have an open mind that some of those people are just doing it for content and make money. They're not even homeless. They're just pretending to be homeless. But the real homeless people, the ones that really live in their cars, that don't have money, or if they have an awful part-time job, or a job where they don't get paid very much an hour, and so they're probably legit, the majority of them. I know that they're not all lying, that they're not all making stuff up to make content. But some of those people, you know what I'm talking about. I live in a van on weekends. I live in a van on weekends. Then I go home to my fancy house all week. So they're not actually living in their van. They're just camping. Camping is like what? A couple days, couple weeks. That's all that is. So they pretend to get all these subscribers and stuff. Now let's talk about subscribers. Anybody who's under 1,000 subscribers, if you happen to go to view a channel that's under 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, please subscribe. Have a heart and subscribe to their channel, because everybody has to get over 1,000 subscribers to start to make a few dollars, to get popular, to have their videos seen more. Please do so. I really appreciate it, and they will too. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Street Executive Order. Thank you for watching my channel, Ronald the Peculiar One. I am moving on to the next video now. I hope you now understand what this is about. And if you want to see this, if you want to look this up, just look up executive order on homelessness, and you will run into some search criteria you can click on. And this one is the White House. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Yeah, this one's I believe is the legit one. I just decided to read this. A lot of people are talking and doing their interpretation, but they're not showing this whole executive order. I just showed you the executive order right here. It's on the White House. There you go, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. And again, moving on to the next video. Have a good one, if you can.